Good morning. Good morning. I would like to call to order the June MTA Board Meeting. I am Paige Graves, General Counsel for the MTA. As General Counsel, I'm indicating that we do have a quorum for this meeting. Before we hear from public speakers, we will have a brief safety announcement.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway, or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Let's hear from our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning and welcome to the MTA Board Meeting's public comment session. Today we'll hear from public speakers both remotely and in person. We have 22 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker today will be Kathleen Collins, followed by Charlton D'Souza over Zoom.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Collins, and I'm with Disabled in Action. Oh, thank you very much. And sadly, my cup overfloweth with issues that are facing voters with disabilities when it comes to the MTA. It is ironic, on the eve of the 33rd anniversary of the landmark civil rights legislation for people with disabilities, and also the 50th anniversary of 504, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, that we are still here having to bring these issues to the MTA board. The first issue is the lack of course, accessible subways, and the fact that in the subways where we do have access, that the elevators are not properly maintained, and the fact that we still have litigation with respect to elevator maintenance. We ask that that litigation be settled and that we start resolving this issue. Second, Access-a-Ride. In 2019, I testified about the lack of seatbelts and shoulder belts, even though the Vehicle and Traffic Law, Section 1229C, requires that vehicles have seatbelts and shoulder belts in them. Still, I am testifying about that. Today, I did get a seatbelt. However, the man did not secure the back of my seat. He only secured the front, even though there's a poster in there showing all 4 spots that's supposed to be secured. Finally, well, there's so many that I ran out of time. But thank you for listening, and I hope you will heed all the other speakers here today that are going to speak and do something. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Charlton D'Souza, followed by Elizabeth Valdez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the president of Passengers United. And today, the MT and the state is going to announce that they're going to have congestion pricing. Well, guess what, guys? I live in Southeast Queens. And why is it that Southeast Queens residents are fighting for crumbs? Because that's what it seems. So we're going to be losing the Atlantic ticket. There's no guarantee that we're going to get a weekly pass. And this is the pass right here, $60. It allows people to have a 7-day unlimited Metro card and a 7-day LIRR pass. So, we're losing this program for Queens residents. It's not going to be extended to Grand Central or Penn Station, but it should. If you guys want to implement congestion pricing, we need discounts. And I found out yesterday from a representative who works in Albany that there is legislation and there is no need for a fare increase. You guys are supposed to keep the monthly commuter tickets at $211 for zone 3 or less. That was put in the congestion pricing legislation. So all this talk about a fare increase at a time when there's violence on the subway, people are being killed, and you see homeless people, EVPs, shooting up needles on the trains. Congestion pricing is going to be a nightmare. And with the Passengers United is not supporting congestion pricing. I want to make that very clear. For the reasons that there's no extra bus routes being included, there's no extra train service. The existing infrastructure is what people are going to be pushed on. And right now, the subways are breaking down every day with network communication issues, signal breakdowns. Where are all these extra millions of people supposed to go? This is going to be a nightmare. And that's why we are not supporting congestion pricing at this time. And we do not support the fare increase. However, we support fair fares. And we hope that the city will implement that as well for poor people. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Elizabeth Valdez, followed by Jean Ryan.
Hi, good morning. My name is Elizabeth Valdez, and I'm the systems advocate at BCID. I want to say what a game changer this on-demand program has been for me. Whenever I have to go to work or an appointment, I don't worry about being late. Whenever I decide to go out for leisure, I don't have to put myself on a schedule like a child who's on a curfew, because I know that I can call on reliable transportation and leave whenever I please. But the proposed phase 2 pilot program will make this program less useful. Many people who are disabled live on fixed income and can't afford to increase. This will significantly affect riders from the outer boroughs because of the $25 and $40 limits. As for the riders that would be able to take advantage of the program, that's $10 round trip, which can be costly, especially for those that work every day and have other frequent obligations. Finally, imposing a limit on the amount of rides a participant is allowed to take and the cost also will be considerably make the program less useful for us. These changes will make the pilot much worse, which I feel are an attack on the program. It is very evident that your intent is to discourage usage with limited benefit for riders like me. I urge you to rethink this plan so that it can actually work for accessorized riders. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jean Ryan, followed by Michael Ring over Zoom.
Hi, I'm Jean Ryan, President of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York, DIA for short. What do subway elevators have to do with on-demand accessorized service? There aren't many elevators in the subway, and they are not well maintained, yet the MTA seems to be okay with the status quo. We are not okay with the status quo. We want to get places, especially since AAR is so unreliable. After years of a lawsuit over elevator maintenance, the MTA has not come up with a plan to have good maintenance and to notify users in a prompt manner when the elevators are out and to provide alternatives transportation. We need to be notified when we are on the train so we don't have to waste time going to the elevator and finding out the hard way that it's out of service. We need to find out on the sidewalk so we don't bother going down to the second elevator when it is out of service. There should never be an elevator for trains going one way and not the other. It makes the MTA look unable to do the right thing. People wonder why you would do that. Every day, people are upset because they cannot get where they are headed. Particular attention needs to be paid to private elevators that frequently go out of service. This inequity can't keep going on, and a solution needs to be found. Developers get perks for putting in an elevator, but then the private companies do not do the right thing. Disability rights organizations are suing the MTA over elevator maintenance. Why do you keep on paying expensive lawyers when you know you're going to have to fix this problem and settle the lawsuit? Because people with disabilities have a right to ride the subways too and expect elevator reliability and cleanliness. Until every station has reliable elevators and a gap solution, we will be fighting for good on-demand access ride service because that's what everyone else has in being able to take the subway as often
Please
and as far
conclude
as
your
they like.
remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Michael Ring, followed by Kimberly Phelan over Zoom.
Hi, my name is Michael Ring. I'm speaking for Disabled in Action of Greater New York. And a short visual description for those who need it is that I'm just a plain old white guy who happens to be COVID positive. So be careful out there. You don't know what COVID positive people look like. I'm one of the lucky people who've been in the on-demand program, and I shouldn't say I'm lucky. I was assigned to it because I'm an activist and I'm an active person, and I use it a lot because it works. It allowed me to travel spontaneously wherever I want in the whole city for the same price as a subway fare, which is what everyone else in this room could do. And these changes that are being called phase 2 are actually a program that is obviously going to make it useless to people who want to travel spontaneously and unlimited in an unlimited way, which is the way everyone else on the subway travels. I'm hoping you could reconsider changing the program. Adding random people makes a lot of sense to find out how people who aren't activists and active people might use the pilot program, but limiting it and putting random costs on it and making us pay the tolls just doesn't make sense. I don't really understand why you're making us pay tolls. They're your tolls. It's like moving money from right hand to the left hand. So please, if you're going to be voting on this, slow it down, reconsider phase 2, and just change one variable at a time if you want to see how things work. Thank you for your time, and everyone stay healthy out there.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Kimberly Phelan, followed by Gian Padula.
Also, as a resident in Queens, I live on 84th Avenue and Bessemer, where the New York Atlantic Railway goes by. I can personally say that they've added more trains, and my house is literally shaking at 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. every day. It's frightening. All my pictures my walls are cracking, and communities are suffering. I mean, the diesel fuel that comes right into my window, into my face, is horrible, and people are getting sick, right? And we have new babies here. Communities are suffering, and you're doing nothing about the locomotives that you've been using since the 1970s. You have almost 40 locomotives that are spewing toxic, climate-changing diesel emissions, and it's really bad. Equivalent to more than 1 million cars that we're breathing in. And you're supposed to be helping and working with communities, and you're not doing what you're supposed to do to help it.
The noise and everything is just really ruining our quality of life. Every day it's getting worse. And the community first asked the MTA board to repower these locomotives in 2009. You had a budget of 20 million to do this, and it's sitting in the controller's contract number DR 36644, and you've had an active locomotive procurement since 2018. And I've heard that negotiations are in progress to finally make an award. It's the people's money. Our families need the tier 4 switches that will produce 95 to 99 less pollution, 75 to 85 less engine noise. We just need healthy air. Let's do this. Let's do this for our community, please. We have to do this for families. People are getting cancer, people are getting sick, and this is really something that cannot be put on the back burner any longer. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Gian Padula, followed by Miriam Fisher.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula, and I'm a supervisor with Educational Vision Services from New York City Public Schools. I'm also a member of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility. I'd like to talk to you guys about unfair fares, and I'd like to talk about disproportionality. Jano, ladies and gentlemen of the board, it is absolutely ridiculous that 6% of the e-hail user base used 50% of that budget. It's unconscionable to me. And how these users aren't being investigated or scrutinized is also just crazy to me, wildly crazy. But the fact that the 94% of us are also going to be disproportionately punished, collective punishment, because we've been using that program for the last 6 years. It's contributed to our lives in so many ways, both personally, professionally, maintaining gainful employment, paying taxes, spending money in our city, restaurants, ball games, shows, spontaneous, dignity, autonomy, access to opportunity like everyone else in this room has. A fare has to be fair. I don't care what you charge me. Charge me what you want, but it's got to give me the same access that the bus, the train, or Access-a-Ride does. I get it. Our geography's crazy. 5 boroughs. It's big. I know. But we need access to those 5 boroughs like anyone else. People in the outer boroughs shouldn't be unduly penalized. This program's been instrumental. You're further disabling this community that has made use of this for such a long time. My ask, 4 uncapped rides a day or 20 uncapped rides a week. But a fare has to be fair, and it has to give me access to all of our city. Thank you, guys. My name is John Padula. Please make some good decisions.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Miriam Fisher, followed by Jason Anthony.
Okay, am I audible?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I want to affirm the support of my colleagues such as Jean Ryan for working and maintain elevators and announcements, but also add some things that are often not discussed, such as benches, removal of benches in many subways, often in stations where homeless congregate, such as 53rd and Lexington on the F and the M. Benches are needed by people with disabilities, seniors, bad backs, knees, pregnant women. Leaving benches are useless. I don't ever see anyone use them and cost more money. Bathrooms. More accessible bathrooms benefits everyone, not spending money on research on elevator odors, which are often because people who are homeless don't have access to bathrooms. We need more of those. The elevators, 34 elevator outages at any given time, 33 escalators from a report by council members Keith Powers and Sanchez, called out of order. announcements in real time of elevator outages on trains and platforms, utilize the new program of staff previously confined to booths who will now be circulating in to relay announcements to speakers, develop clear guidelines for them to help stranded riders dependent on elevators. Their announcements on the trains in real time when trains switch at the last minute from local to express, which gets communicated quickly, skipping expected stops. Announcements of whether the next station has elevators where they are on the platform, but not elevator is work.
Please conclude your remarks. Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jason Anthony, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning, everyone on the board. On the Tuesday after my birthday, speaking this morning from LaGuardia Community College. A couple of things that I want to address. One, good news that we're going to receive later today from Governor Hochul and some officials regarding congestion pricing. This is way overdue that we receive the green light from the Federal Transportation Administration. We hope that the money received from congestion pricing is well utilized. Number two, subway surfing. Yet again, another incident occurred earlier this week along the Canarsie line. Three, you guys should reconsider the second phase of the pilot program of the e-hail because the changes proposed will disenfranchise those that will benefit on the program. Instead of capping it, it should be totally unlimited because God forbid if a person has an emergency, what will be the case? They won't not even afford. Not but not least, we should expand the Fair Fares program to the commuter rails. So that's all I have to say for this month. I'll see you guys in July.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Lisa Daglian, followed by Sally Wolf.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. We've finally gotten the good news from the federal government that congestion pricing and the mitigations that have been proposed will meet the goals of the program with the final FONSI. Yay. We believe the impacts will be significant and very impressive. Less traffic, better air quality, and substantial funding for improvements to our trains and buses and the infrastructure through and over which they run. Taken together, this is a significant step forward for our region's health and the well-being of our transit riders and system. Congestion pricing will reap billions of dollars to improve the MTA's signals and stations, improve accessibility, buy new rolling stock, and build big things like IBX, the next phase of the 2nd Avenue subway, and bring Metro North into Penn Station, a much improved Penn Station, thanks to the announcement made yesterday by Governor Hochul and others. 80% of funds raised by congestion pricing tolling will go to support New York City Transit Capital Program, while the other 20% will be divided between Metro North and the Long Island Railroad. Millions of riders will benefit, including bus riders in Midtown, who will see faster speeds on some of the slowest routes anywhere. Ambulances, fire trucks, and delivery drivers will feel the positive effects of congestion pricing, with less traffic to dodge and a smoother ride. For naysayers in New Jersey, it's critical to note that some 90% of people commute into the central business district by public transit, particularly lower-income travelers. For those who do drive, they'll get where they are going with fewer delays. Investing in and improving transit in New Jersey and across the region is the best way to get people where they need to go. We applaud USDOT, Governor Hochul, the MTA, and its partners for being so diligent in their efforts to ensure that mitigation efforts will be put into place to address concerns that were raised during the review process. Where New York leads, others will follow. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Sally Wolf, followed by Vincent Padula.
Good morning. I'm Sally Wolf. I live in Flatiron, and I believe this is my 10th or so time speaking here. I never expected to return here each month, but in addition to speaking about masking, I've listened to all the other folks who are sharing their experiences. And one of the things I've heard most frequently is about accessibility. We live in an incredible city, but we don't live in a fully accessible city, particularly for folks who have any mobility challenges. I have personally been navigating the city on crutches for the better part of 2 months. It's my first time ever on crutches, first preemptively with an impending stress fracture, and now I am 2 weeks out of surgery with a titanium rod now in my femur. While I don't wish injury on anyone, I do invite each board member to try navigating this city for even 1 hour on crutches or in a wheelchair. It is not easy. But I've had it relatively easy because instead of worrying that I'd arrive at a subway destination with a broken elevator or escalator or waiting hours for Access-a-Ride, I've had the privilege of splurging on private Lyft rides and cabs so that for my 5:30 a.m. arrival for surgery, I didn't have to worry I'd be there an hour late. Or when I was ready to leave the hospital, I didn't have to book in advance, which I couldn't do because I didn't know when I'd be dismissed. I could just go get an immediate lift. There's so much efficiency to that system, and the technology is available to you. I have heard today that there's this phase 1 and select people have been invited to participate, but it doesn't sound like it's available to everyone. It doesn't sound like it will be. And no one who's going to tons of doctor's appointments has any idea how long they'll last. I've waited 4 hours for my oncologist, and after that, I can't imagine waiting any longer to get home. Please use the technology available, brainstorm with executives from Uber and DoorDash, let people do a hackathon on behalf of the MTA. With more
Please
accessibility
conclude your remarks.
and true equity, our city will be an even more incredible place. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Vincent Padula, followed by Monica Bartley.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here remotely. I was, before COVID, coming to the meetings regularly. I am a Access-a-Ride patron since 2001 and have seen the program develop and remember the bus system and how it used to be before the on-demand program came to be. Now, as a father of 5, a homeowner, a unionist, a chapter leader who has to represent teachers, a vision teacher, a musician, and someone who just wants to be treated equally. We were told before COVID that we were going to put money into protecting the subways and policing the subways. And I have to be honest, as somebody who's blind, I fear for my life. Not that I potentially can even step in waste material because our subways have degraded to the point of not even being used. Now, I will say we have the on-demand program, and what I'd like to call this talk is broke and broker service. So yes, if you don't have the on-demand program, you could use broker service, but that's non-TLC drivers, car services, and subpar service with drivers who can't speak English. And as a blind patron, trying to get to my location, I've had to call my wife to get on the phone to tell me where I am. So my hope is that the on-demand program will continue, and as was suggested, investigate the abuse. But traditional service costs more. We have apps. Infrastructure is limited. And so really, we need fair market prices so that we can be independent and use the service appropriately. Because for once in my life, now I do have the independence as a New Yorker and as a taxpayer, mind you. So my name is Vincent Padula. I hope the board would consider this program. It's effective, and I'd like to see it continue, but make sure that it's value, pricing, and abuses are policed.
Please
Don't put
conclude
a
your
Band-Aid on
remarks.
this. Thank you so much. And please consider a sustainable solution.
Thank you
so
for
much.
your remarks. Our next speaker will be Monica Bartley, followed by Sasha Blair Goldenson.
Good morning. My name is Monica Bartley, a member of DIA of Metropolitan New York. We commend the MTA on the settlement of the subway elevator case and really feel excited when a new elevator is installed. However, they are no use to us if they are not properly maintained. We're terribly inconvenienced when we have to return to our starting point or travel to the next accessible station. We miss appointments and it is very stressful. We are calling on the MTA to maintain all elevators. This includes privately owned elevators that never seem to work, and provide real-time notification of broken elevators on subways, platforms, and at street level, as well as through apps and social media, so that we can be better informed and we can avoid the inconvenience of having to find ways to reroute. Finally, we call on Governor Hochul and the MTA to settle the elevator maintenance case. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Sasha Blair Goldenson, followed by Iris Kelly.
Hello, I'm Sasha Blair Goldenson from the Rise and Resist Elevator Action Group, White Man in Elevators Are for Everyone t-shirt and background photo of a yellow gate at a subway elevator. First, I want to affirm the remarks of Kathy, Jean, Miriam, Monica, and happy birthday, Jason Anthony. We are all here because for wheelchair users like me and everyone who needs subway elevators to ride safely, we see these yellow gates at broken elevators way too often. More than 30 stations are out on an average day. That's a safety emergency, full stop. People like me are stuck on a platform or outside the station, and it's very dangerous for older adults, people with strollers, luggage, or deliveries who have to take their chances on the stairs. It's elevators, not rocket science. The whole city runs on them. And smart, dedicated MTA union employees could fix this. But Governor Kathy Hochul sets the priorities. We need her, Governor Kathy Hochul, to make this a priority, to make us a priority. Direct the resources here, because broken elevators are a danger for us, but also a vulnerability for New York's competitive future. The tourists won't visit, the young families won't settle, the older adults won't retire without reliable, public, accessible transformation. In April, we finalized the landmark agreement. That's fantastic, but for that to pay off and not just mean more yellow gates, Governor Hochul, we need you to endorse and sign the legally binding agreement in the elevator maintenance case. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Iris Kelly, followed by Kara Leibowitz.
And I feel as though they have, they're starting to put in a new elevator for 95th Street in Village. They should have the entrance for 93rd, which would be better connections from when we get out of the elevators from Bay Ridge going to Atlanta Terminal. And on for the railroad, they need to have more, put it back the way they had for Brooklyn was able to get their own connections for going into Manhattan, going to Long Island, doing Long Island trains. But now we have to go into Jamaica just to get a connecting point to get to anything in Long Island. And then they had chaos, they had machine up top to be able to show the trains. We can see where we gotta go for people visually impaired. But they took that out. They put all advertisement. But you have it all up top, you'll be able to see, people are going to see it, not visually impaired. But it's not good, we can't see that for us, type people. It was great when we had before that, on tracks 6 and 7. And then I agree about the elevators, they need to be fixed. You need them accessible for people to come, make it in and out of the subway, make it easy for them to get around. This is very important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Kara Leibowitz, followed by Monique Johnson.
Good morning. I am back again. My name is Kara Leibowitz. I'm the Advocacy Coordinator at the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled, BCID. I am here today to ask once again that the MTA settle our ongoing lawsuit about elevator maintenance. Being a wheelchair user navigating the subway system is difficult enough. With constant elevator outages, it can feel nearly impossible. I can't count the number of times my plans have been derailed, pun unintended, by a broken down subway elevator. Sometimes the outage isn't even listed on the MTA website. Sometimes an elevator will be working when I leave my apartment, but broken by the time I reach the subway. Outages occur with little warning and little to no communication about when the elevators will be back in service. We have excellent audio announcements on the trains now designating which stations are accessible and where on the platform the elevator is located. Would it be so difficult to include announcements in audio and visual forms if the elevator at a station is currently out? When I lived in the Washington, D.C. area, which has a fully accessible metro system, if one elevator was out, I could easily get back on the train and go to the next stop, which usually wasn't too out of my way. That's impossible to do in a system when only a quarter of stations have elevators in the first place. We're all thrilled that the MTA settled their lawsuit with BCID and others last summer, and it's committed to making over 90% of stations accessible, but the work will not be fully done until over 30 years from now. Meanwhile, people with mobility disabilities like myself need to get around the city now. Between the inaccessible system, poor elevator maintenance, and the ongoing issues with Access-a-Ride, including the proposed Phase 2 expansion, e-hail expansion, that would nearly double the fare for on-demand travel, it's starting to feel like the progress we made last year was just temporary. Settling the elevator maintenance lawsuit is a great first step to proving me wrong. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Monique Johnson, followed by Jennifer Van Dyke.
Good morning. My name is Monique Johnson. I had just came disabled this year, February. I need the elevator. Since I came disabled, every stop that I went to, like in Unicode and stuff, and the elevator was broken, I also suffer from PTSD. I have screws in my neck, so if I fall, I die. If the elevator is not working. And sometimes I can't even get the, like if emergency come, I can't get Access-a-Ride because if you don't put it the day before, you can't get Access-a-Ride. So then I have to rely on the elevators and the subway. And when they're not working, I'm going to panic because I don't know how to get home. If that elevator is not working, I have to go to the next stop where the elevator is working. Then even after I do find a working elevator, now I have to take the bus to get back to my destination. It's unfair. I've never been in this predicament before. Like I said, I'm a new disabled, and I'm just trying to figure out how to move in my life. But I need the MTA to help me, to make me feel safe. Because if somebody bump, push, or there's not an elevator, and I happen to take this chair and myself up a step, I could die if I fall because I have screws in my neck now. So all of this is new to me. I'm just asking you to help all of us who are disabled, who are under construction, like I call myself, under construction, because I'm not a victim to nothing. But I do need your help. Please, let us have working elevators. Let us have other destinations or alternations that we can use. And that's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jennifer Van Dyke, followed by Yolanda Alain.
I'm Jennifer Van Dyke, and I'm with the Elevator Action Group. And I have some questions for the board. Why do we have to take you to court before you do the right thing? We fought for 5 years before you reached a settlement that means the subway system will be 95% accessible in the year 2055. Meanwhile, another lawsuit is making its way through the courts for more than 6 years that demands the elevators you build are maintained. Why is this even in court? Why would you agree to build more elevators but not agree to maintain them? Now, why do we have to reintroduce new bills in order for the disability rights community to get representation on this board, around this table? Assemblymember Epstein and Senator Persaud passed a bill in the New York State Senate that requires, quote, one voting member of the MTA to be a transit-dependent individual with a disability, end quote. We have been asking for representation for years. How can you make changes that adequately reflect the needs of those with disabilities without having a true representative at the table? Why do we have to institute a bill before you do anything about it? Have you ever taken the subway with someone who uses a wheelchair or is visually impaired, hearing impaired, needs wayfinding assistance? Have you ever looked for an elevator and when you found it, discovered it was out of service? You need individuals with firsthand experience weighing in on policies that make a difference to millions of New Yorkers every single day. As Assemblymember Epstein states, representation in leadership is vital to ensuring an accessible, equitable, and efficient transit system. Finally, why are you removing transit workers from elevators in Upper Manhattan when they perform a vital service? We need transit workers who keep an eye out for passengers in those deep, multi-story elevators. They make us safe. They provide a sense of security. We stand in solidarity with transit workers. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Yolanda Elaine, followed by Dustin Jones.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Aline. I'm here to speak on the new second phase of so-called on-demand service. I am one of the original users of on-demand. Yesterday when I left here, it took me an hour, more than an hour, to get a cab to get me from here to Brooklyn. This morning I had an 8:30 appointment. The guy did not show up until after 9. I barely made this meeting. The questions still remain in this thing. All you guys have access to go on any subway, any bus that you feel, anytime you feel. Even the homeless and the deranged people get on the subway anytime they want. Accessorized users or on-demand users can't have that possibility. And those on-demand users that they have, most of us are on fixed income. So where do we get that extra money to pay for the new type service that you guys are coming up with? We getting at the area bank. We cannot go to Citibank to produce money. We're not on any kind of board that give us money to get us from point A to point B. What kind of nonsense is this? Here, last month, the governor stood right here and said she wanted the fare to go to $3. She didn't want to go above $3. Yet still, you guys are saying $5 or $10 ride. Can you imagine if someone have to take that when they have medical appointment and all that for 6 times a week? You know how much money it is? It's $60. Where do these people have? We don't have that discretionary income. What nonsense. All of you guys, all of y'all are able to get on the subway whenever you feel like. Why can't we have the same right? It's disgusting to think that everyone in here can get on the subway whenever they feel like, get on the bus whenever they feel like, but us disabled, our stressor ride users cannot have the same respect or dignity. That is nonsense. You guys, you need to hold all your feet to the fire. This young lady over there that's on the board, she was quite excited when they had stroller available. So why can we, as stressor ride user, on-demand ride, get the same thing? If I could get on the subway, I would be paying $2.90, or as a senior, I'd be getting less, paying half fare. Why can't a stressor ride user get the same on-demand, using on-demand, get the same privilege? This is ridiculous. This is not only ridiculous, but it's unfair. And all you guys gonna vote for that so that we that have no discretionary income have to pay for something that we can't afford. So in other words, you're trying to ban the program and let us go back to waiting for people to come and pick us up or begging rides from our customers.
Please conclude your remarks.
Most people would definitely prefer to take the subway. Why do you think every week, every month, these folks come to beg for a
Please
subway?
conclude your remarks.
To use the elevators on the subway. The preference is to take the subway.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Dustin Jones, followed by Joe Rappaport.
You know, I find it a little comical that this is a public forum and I look around and half of you guys are looking down. So it shows that you don't give a damn about what we're saying, but that's a different story. For 10 years, I've been advocating and I've been sitting before you in some way, shape, or form. And I've been asking to please do your jobs and take seriously disability issues. You guys fail us when it comes to safety on the trains, on the buses, and somehow you guys even mess up on a system, Accessoride, that is designed specifically for us. If this isn't mismanagement, I don't know what is. So while you guys are looking down and texting, those of you who are doing it, I advise you to stop overlooking disability issues. We are paying customers whether you want to count us or not. Take our issues, take our wants and our needs seriously. Invest in this community. We are going to continue to come here and fight for your attention that I see now I have since I mentioned what I mentioned. But I'll tell you one thing in closing. We are not going to stop, and we are going to continue to pressure you guys to take us seriously. And me personally, if I have to call you out and still not have some of your attention, the gentleman right there, then the next time I'm coming up here naked.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Joe Rappaport, followed by our final speaker for today, Elliot Roseborough.
Good morning. I'm Joe Rappaport of the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled. Almost exactly 1 year ago, we celebrated the settlement of 2 lawsuits with the MTA. And the MTA committed itself to making 95% of subway stations accessible. It was a great day for the MTA, for disability advocates, and for everyone in New York City. We had hoped to settle a 3rd lawsuit over the poor maintenance of subway elevators. Nothing has happened since then, and here we are a year later. The MTA still has the same high-priced lawyers that you hire to do your bidding. They're making the same tired arguments about how you're doing a great job, and we get the same elevator outages that impede travel for people with mobility disabilities. You and Governor Hochul have shown you can do better. It's time to settle this lawsuit. Speaking of doing better, how about that? A new proposal for on-demand Accessoride service. Instead of moving forward with this program, you're rolling back. Now, I do want to compliment the MTA Department of Euphemisms. Once again, you've come through by calling this a premium service, when it's the bare minimum of what you should be offering. Last time, you called broker service enhanced broker service. And of course, your own data show that about 1 in 5 broker rides are late, along with the other problems you've heard about today. You'll hear today about how this proposal is similar to other programs around the country. But here in New York, $40 just doesn't get you that far. This is a discriminatory plan that is designed to shut out riders with a foolish limit on the number of trips and the cost of those trips, plus an 82% increase in the fare from $2.75 to $5. Again, do better. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our final speaker for today will be Elliot Roseborough.
Hey, boy. Good morning. I have some copies here with my contact information, if anybody would take those. My name is Elliot Roseborough, and I am a community advocate, also a former vice president of the city's largest community organization. And I helped to create the city's third largest political party almost 28 years ago. I thank you for allowing me to weigh in on this particularly important issue of fare increases. Because of inflation and other economic factors, a huge number of your riders and non-riders have to reduce or even stop their extracurricular and entertainment activities. I believe that added to this fare increase to an already abnormally high rents will significantly reduce non-work-related ridership enough to nullify a significant portion of your planned fare increase. I would propose that finding ways to both actively and passively increase ridership and trips as one way to increase both ridership and trips towards more lucrative funding of your transit system would be a wise decision. Also, the two organizations that I offer my volunteer leadership to and others that we work with have ties extending from here through Albany and to the federal Congress and even to the White House at some level. Perhaps among other resources and working together, we can tap into some of President Biden's Build Back America funding to stave off at least this round of fare increases. I hope that my thoughts on this subject might lead to some current and potential alternative thoughts and solutions to the funding of our transit system. Lastly, my great friend and community advocate Connie Lessel asked me to lobby you about restoring the B71 bus line in Brooklyn. Consider yourself lobbied. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Chair Lieber, that concludes the public comment session.
Thank you to all our public speakers. We do appreciate the effort that folks make to come here in person and the passion that they bring to the discussions. A lot of what we heard today was about the new e-hail program, and while there's energy on the topic, and I know I want to be respectful of the time of people who came to talk about that and other paratransit issues, I want to go right to Chris Pangilinan, who's the VP of Paratransit, to discuss the e-hail expansion program that the board is voting on today. I do need to say, Chris has, I'm respectful of what everybody says from the podium, but we just need to be also respectful of the evidence. Chris has made incredible improvements in paratransit. Ridership is higher than before COVID. On-time performance is way, way up into the 90s percentage. And in fact, we are in the next few months going to actually finalize the reduction of the time we use to measure on-time performance, a significant upping of the bar of the MTA standards for itself in how we deliver paratransit service. And all of that effort has led to a dramatic increase in customer satisfaction among our paratransit users. So I will hand it over to Chris to talk about e-hail phase 2 as proposed by the staff to this board.
Thank you, Jano, and good morning, everybody. I'm very excited to be here again before you to talk about the expansion of e-hail. So I will do so here with the presentation. We'll go on to the next. Oh, I have this thing. Sorry. The agenda today, I'll first give an overview of Access-a-Ride, which I think is important to lay the groundwork before I get into a discussion of what exactly e-hail is, and then again talk about the expansion that we're looking at doing this summer. So first, what is Access-a-Ride? When I came here back in September, I gave this overview, but again, I think it's important to look at it under today's context. So under the Americans with Disabilities Act, back in 1990, all transit agencies are required to provide complimentary paratransit service. Now, the intent of this paratransit service was to serve as a safety net for individuals with disabilities who are not able to use fixed route service. Now, there are no limits to the trip purpose or travel within the service area, which for New York happens to be the 5 boroughs plus 3/4 mile into Nassau and Westchester counties. An important note here with the legislation of the ADA, as well as the federal policy that came out of it back in 1990, is that the federal policy outlines paratransit as a next-day shared ride service that is not intended to reflect a taxi service. And this is why paratransit across the United States operates the way it does, and this is the way that we operate it here in New York. In addition, the federal policy allows paratransit providers to charge up to twice the base fare for paratransit, and a number of properties do this around the country, including in New York State. However, here in New York City, of course, we charge the base fare for paratransit, which currently is $275. Now, over the past 18 months, we've had a number of successes at Access-a-Ride, notwithstanding, of course, the very valid public comment that we've heard today and at prior meetings of difficult experiences with paratransit. However, over the first 4 months of 2023, we've had record ridership with paratransit, over 2.4 million rides, which of course is higher than pre-pandemic. And we're working on updating a lot of our technology, including an installation of and upgrading our GPS system in our 1,200 Access-a-Ride blue and white vans. We had an issue back in January, which we need to replace those, and so we'll be completing that replacement in July, which will help further boost our reliability and on-time performance. We've, like other properties around the country, fixed route and paratransit, we've had a massive driver shortage out of the pandemic. But thankfully, over the last 2 years, thanks to the efforts of the folks in Long Island City with Access-a-Ride, we've gone from 24% to 2% vacancy on our blue and white vans, which is absolutely incredible. We've also have gone from 5,000 to over 10,000 taxi and for-hire vehicle drivers here in New York City that are qualified to take Access-a-Ride trips. And now 70% of all of our trips are provided by our local taxi and for-hire vehicle drivers here in New York, which is incredible. All of this has helped make big strides in our reliability to boost on-time performance, reduce our no-shows, and improve customer satisfaction. And of course, we're not where we want to be yet, but it is good to see progress along the way. So to get to where we want to go and to further improve our customer experience, we've got several ongoing initiatives, including the one that I'm going to talk to you more about today, including procuring a new software scheduling engine to help reduce the shared ride travel times, and further improve on-time performance, which are two major issues that our customers have with Access-a-Ride. We also want to be tightening our on-time performance window to 20 minutes to hold ourselves even more to a higher standard than before. And of course, improving our online booking experience. I'm happy to say that we're almost at 9% now of our trips are booked online, which is up from 5% a year ago. And we're going to continue to push that number higher to improve our call center experience for our customers, as well as improve our online experience for our customers. And lastly, we're looking at expanding the eHail pilot program, which I'll talk more about here. So what exactly is eHail? So the best way to think about it is it's a flexible and spontaneous service that is for our ADA paratransit customers. It's an on-demand service similar to popular app-based services that many of us use today. And the customers will book their trip directly with the vendors that are part of eHail. And luckily in New York, thanks to the great policies at the TLC, we have a number of wheelchair accessible vehicles available, not perfect yet, but we do have a lot more than most cities, as well as having sedans available. So that allows our customers to choose the vehicles that they need. And why are we looking at eHail? As I mentioned to you earlier, the paratransit legislation and the paratransit structure is not to necessarily look like a taxi service. But as we've heard from the public comment and from a number of folks, and of course myself here as a customer, we want more flexibility and spontaneity built into the system, and that's what eHail provides. And so having this layer of eHail on top of the regular Access-a-Ride service can build that more higher level of flexibility and spontaneity for folks to enjoy more education, employment, recreation, and other opportunities that the city has to offer. So we've been doing eHail, this program, since 2017. We launched what we called Phase 1 back in November 2017, originally to 200 customers, but since expanded to 1,200 shortly after that was launched. That pilot had an unlimited number of trips per month and an unlimited subsidy per month. And unfortunately, when it was launched, there was really no plan for data collection, no plan for expansion, and no budget set for this pilot. So the lack of structure has gotten us to where we are today with the issues that we're trying to address with Phase 2. Now, when the participants came into Phase 1 of eHail, nearly all participants saw an increase in their trip frequency, which is great. That means people were exploring the city more and doing more of the things that they needed to do to live their lives. And despite that, though, we still had 81% of all participants took 25 or fewer trips per month. And almost 90% took 40 or fewer trips per month. And this is why the Phase 2 structure was this is where we land on the Phase 2 structure, because of the vast majority of Phase 1 participants would not be impacted by the trip cap. Phase 1, the pilot was about a $12 to $16 million budget, growing more toward the $16 million in the last several months. And as one of the public speakers said, top 6% of our customers used 50% of the budget. And that led to an annual cost of nearly $100,000 per customer for those top 70 customers. And this is what happened with this pilot. Again, the lack of structure, the lack of objective, if you will, in this pilot led to a system where it was skewed very far on the tail of the usage curve, and essentially tied our hands in the ability to expand this pilot to more people. So what we want to do is create a more financially sustainable pilot that, again, the vast majority of people can use from phase 1 into phase 2 with minimal impact, and we can expand the number of people using the pilot. So what we're looking to do here is to pilot an e-hail program that is also consistent with our Access-a-Ride approach, which is a more reliable Access-a-Ride service for everyday trips, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, while adding on this layer of flexibility and spontaneity that e-hail provides. We will also be collecting data and have a robust data collection plan, KPIs, and a hypothesis with this plan that we will be testing with this pilot to collect data and evaluate what those look like and be able to come back with recommendations on what to do with the e-hail program a year from now based on this data collection. So what is the proposal? What we're looking to do is triple the number of participants to 3,600. So adding 2,400 randomly selected customers who represent the Access-a-Ride customer base by disability, borough of residence, trip frequency, age, and other factors. That way we can have a more robust data collection set of those folks coming in. We're also adding new on-demand providers. So Aero, the Yellow Cab app, is actually coming back from phase 1. We're also adding the corporate transportation group, the drivers cooperative, and Uber into the system. And customers will be able to choose one or all of these providers at their discretion. We'll be enhancing the flexibility and spontaneity for triple the number of customers beginning on August 1st through an e-hail distance program, which allows 25 trips per month for $45, for up to $44 each, and a high volume program for 40 trips per month, up to $29 each. And I apologize for the error in the slide here, because we just had a change to the copay. We're going to actually have a $4 copay, not a $5 copay. And this is thanks to the advocacy and the voices that we heard yesterday in voicing the displeasure of the $5 copay. So this will actually be a $4 copay for e-hail phase 2 in this proposal. Now, this proposal is very much in line with the more mature paratransit programs across the U.S. with on-demand systems, such as in San Francisco, where they have a 20% copay up to $330 per month, so about $55 or so per allocation. And in Boston, where they charge about twice of their paratransit program, but they only allow a couple trips per month with their on-demand program. Again, we have 25 and 40 in this system here. So that is the proposal, and the idea here is that we will fit e-hail as a layer, again, to add that flexibility and spontaneity to the improved reliability of Access-a-Ride that we're working on over the next several months and several years. And of course, this will sit alongside the accessible bus system and the subway system that we're striving to make much more accessible. Before I conclude here, I want to make a couple acknowledgments of folks who have been very important in making e-hail happen. Of course, this is not me by any means, but a team behind me. Don Raimondi has been working very hard the last 6 months to a year to bring the vendors on and get this structure here. So thank you, Don. Thank you, Howie Levine, for helping put this together. And last but not least, thank you to the advocates who've been working tirelessly over the last 5 years to get a structure of e-hail to work. And even if we might not be at the same place, the advocates have pushed me and pushed the board and pushed the MTA towards, I think, what is a much better solution than we proposed back in March 2020, when it was only 15 rides and $16 per trip. So thank you to the advocates, and thank you to the Access-a-Ride staff for getting us here. Let me turn it over to Camilla Arroyo, my colleague, the Chief Accessibility Officer, for some words about e-hail as well. Q.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I'd have to start by saying thank you and to your entire team, Chris, for all the amazing work that you guys are doing to create a better paratransit system for all of our customers. And that goes without saying. Rich Davey, thank you so much for your leadership and support of paratransit. When you got here, Rich, you spoke about Access-a-Ride around the nation being the redheaded stepchild in our community, and that wasn't going to fly here. You've been a great support to Chris and his team, and we're really changing the needle, moving the needle on paratransit at large. But beyond that, I also like to thank the advocates for continuing to push us to do better and continue to advocate. It is because of your advocacy that we have so many successes. And let me talk a little bit about those. We have a historic capital plan investing over $5.2 billion to enhance accessibility throughout our systems. Not only adding more elevators and ramps, but redefining accessibility and making it more user-friendly for people with intellectual disabilities, for those with low vision, and those who can't hear. Tim Mulligan yesterday spoke about our current capital plan, which has more work than the past 3 capital plans combined for accessibility. He mentioned how we're going to be installing over 14 stations actively in construction right now. We're not even halfway through with the 70 stations that we're going to make accessible in this current capital plan. That is because of the work of this leadership team and the advocates fighting for more accessibility. And beyond that, our historic landmark settlement that we came to the table together with the disability community, which is going to invest over $30 billion, the largest investment in the history of the United States of any municipality for a transit system. We are doing that together with the advocates. Demetrius and Jose spoke yesterday, taking us a deep dive into the hundreds of employees that go into our system every day, 7 days a week, to perform work on tracks and platforms and enhance accessibilities. And of course, accessibility and affordability continue to be a priority for us. You see that in the 1.5 million people enrolled in our reduced fare programs made up of New Yorkers of over the age of 65 and New Yorkers with disabilities who move around our transit systems in our bus, in paratransit, and our subways. We have over 291,000 people enrolled in fair fares. And just last night, we heard from Councilmember Gail Brewer, who reminded us that there are over 930,000 eligible New Yorkers for fair fares who we want to invite to use our transit system, to sign up for fair fares and pay half fare when you're moving around our systems. And of course, paratransit, the largest paratransit system in the world here, led by Chris Pangilinan and his team, to move over 30,000 trips every day. I don't want us to forget that though we're talking about e-hail today, we have an incredible paratransit system that we're investing dollars and enhancing to make a better system. Those paratransit customers can also avail themselves of a Metro card for 4 free trips a day, 8 free trips a day in our mass transit system if they ride with a personal care attendant. We've been offering that, and we continue to offer that, to incentivize paratransit users to use mass transit, subways, and buses. And let's not forget that our bus systems was the first transit bus fleet in America to be fully accessible, moving New Yorkers with disabilities every day to get to jobs, to get to school, to get to where they wanted to go. We do that, over 5,800 buses moving around 24/7. And I want to say that we are doing what we heard about today. We are enhancing the system to provide more real-time information for customers about elevator outages and changes that are happening in real time. We're doing that with the investments of having more internet connectivity within our system so that people can get that information on their phones. We're adding digital display screens not only on our platforms, but in our subways and in our buses to provide that real-time information. And spending $200 million in this capital plan to enhance our public announcement systems. We're doing that. We're moving station agents out of the booths so that they can better assist our customers moving around the systems and getting them out of elevators so that they can be our eyes and ears throughout our systems, helping customers move around with ease and get to where they want to go. And though he isn't here today, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to our newest board member, Dr. J.R. Rizzo, who is a member of the disability community and will also bring that voice to this forum, which we used to have when Victor Calisi was a board member here. But so I want to bring it back to e-hail. E-hail was a flawed program that was released in 2017 for 2% of our entire active paratransit community, which is made up of 60,000 people, and only 7% of our entire demographic in paratransit. We have 175,000 people registered in paratransit, and it is unfair and not equitable for those squeaky customers who had relationships with these previous administrations. You heard it before. We heard one of our public speakers identify themselves as an activist and loud voice, and that's how they got into that pilot. That is not fair to every other paratransit customer who isn't one of those 1,200 people. We are doing right by enhancing that program and providing a better service that's going to allow us to have a better representation of paratransit customers, not just those activists. A pilot that has theories and tests to allow us to learn about behavioral changes of our customers that sheds light into what a true cost for a greater expansion could look like that is financially sound and sustainable, not only for us, but for our customers and who we serve, allowing us to learn and have data to base it on what a larger program could look like. So yes, we're talking about eHealth today, but we are doing an incredible job moving accessibility holistically at the MTA, and I want to thank you, Chair Lieberman, for keeping that.
Okay, all right. We're going to vote during the period where we do our formal voting business on the eHealth pilot proposal. But I wanted to invite board members to comment or ask questions of Chris Pangolin and Quimella Roy or any of the rest of us. Anybody want to comment at this point? Okay. So let me, what? I'm sorry, Blanca Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question on implementation, if that's okay. So if we are going, if this is approved and the expansion begins on or around August 1st, will the number of 3,600 customers be notified before August 1st, let's say?
Yeah, thanks for the question. What we're going to be, should this be approved, what we're looking to do is to move the phase 1 folks onto phase 2 first and put them in the program that least impacts their current travel behavior, which I mentioned earlier. And then once they're on board, we'll be notifying that the remaining 2,400 and beginning to onboard them as soon as we can.
Ms. Valdivia.
Great. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Q. I think we're in all agreement that we heard compelling testimony yesterday and today. It's clear there's so many people invested in this program. And I know for many, this program has really changed lives. So kind of similar to your vein, Q, I really want to commend the leaders in accessibility here at the MTA. I remember 5 years ago, we didn't even really have senior management in accessibility. So for Q and Chris, thanks for shepherding this program because I know it has been challenging. And, you know, thanks to our chair for putting accessibility on the forefront and keeping it there. I think, you know, I am excited that the 1,200 is moving to 3,600. I think that is far more than I think what anybody had imagined back in 2019. So that's good. Thankful for the conversations me and Q have had, me and Will Schwartz. So there's a lot of people that have had conversations with me. So thank you for the time you spent with me. I just do have a question, and I don't think it'll be a surprise to folks. So can you just take me through the thinking? Because we heard testimony about how, you know, many on a fixed income would feel locked out of the program, and that maybe the new structures will kind of cut off essential demand or threaten like the design or science behind the new phase of the pilot, because you talk about your emphasis on collecting and evaluating data. That's really important. Can you just take me through like the two subcategories and why that is more beneficial than, let's say, giving somebody in other cities, I think they get like a $300 cap or a $500 cap. Just wanted to understand a little bit of distance and the high volume.
Yeah, thank you, Midori. Yeah, so the two programs, the distance and the high volume program, we constructed that to we were looking at the phase 1 travel patterns, which again, they are skewed, as we all in this room acknowledge, given the population that is using it. However, it did provide at least some data for us to look at. And so what we were trying to do is construct a program, originally one program, that would allow most people, a vast majority, 90%, to fit within that from the trip cap perspective. We turned it into two programs, and expanded to 3,600 people instead of 2,400 people, because we wanted to be able to do a larger experiment to see, okay, is it a distance travel that's important to people, or is it volume? Perhaps it's both. We can find out with the data that we're collecting under this pilot. I do want to emphasize, too, that everybody will still, and always will, that are eligible paratransit users, whether they're in the eHealth pilot or not, have unlimited access to the traditional Access-a-Ride and can always book those through the Access-a-Ride, the standard procedures, and have that at the base fare of currently at $275. Now, with the way that we're going forward with this, again, the current structure we've come up with based on the data that we have. We're going to be collecting data with this. We're going to be looking at it throughout the year, and this is a pilot. What we want to do is understand what are the costs and benefits of this program to our customers. How are they using it? How are they not using it? What are things we can do to improve? That way, when we have a nice, robust set of data, whether it be in the spring or summer of next year, we can come back and say, here's what we learned. Here's how we should structure it, whether we need to change it or not, to benefit more people while continuing to be financially sustainable. That's our goal. And so we're gonna learn a lot of these lessons with this phase.
And so I have a follow-up. So do the people who get an opportunity to be part of this pilot, do they have to opt in, or will you opt in for them, or will they self-select?
We will select randomly of our existing customers, of our active customers. And if they, after we reach out to them, if they refuse to be part of the eHealth program, we'll move on and find someone else that wants to take that slot. There is some value, though, in people that do sign up and then never use it. That's actually good data for us. That tells us what the distribution of usage is. But we are going to find people that are interested in signing up.
I'm sorry, I think I didn't clarify. So once they're in the program, are they going to say, okay, I'm going to be a high volume user, or I'm going to be a long distance user, or will the MTA say, we want to put you in this category? How will that work?
Yes, thank you. The 2,400 new people, we're going to assign them to a specific program to make sure we have representation across both programs with the new people. Of the phase 1 people, the people that are already part of eHealth now, we will assign them based on their travel patterns to make sure they have the least impact. And if they want a specific program, we're happy to accommodate the phase 1 folks for that.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this topic? Okay. Mr. Jones.
I would just like to say, when I came on this board, I guess in 2016, to look at the movement basically driven by the advocacy community. I must say, I've never seen advocates more effective in this regard in my long career in not-for-profits and the rest. So I just like to recognize what they've done here. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question and then a comment after the question. But to Chris, you mentioned that you're going to place the 2,400 in one of the 2 programs. So will there be switches mid-year, for example, if you hear from a particular customer that a different program might work better for them as circumstances in life may change, et cetera? Yeah, our current intention is to have folks stay in the program for either the 6-month or 1-year pilot. That way we can collect the data that we need to evaluate on how that program works with the selection we made this month, or this summer, excuse me. Okay. And just a comment, I too would like to echo what my colleagues have said, that this is positive movement on a program that certainly enables the spontaneity, as was mentioned here, for our disabled community. And what I would, I do also want to acknowledge that many of the conversations that we've had over the past 24 hours amongst the MTA senior leadership and our board have been positive. Nothing is perfect. This is the next phase of a successful program. There were lessons learned from phase 1. There will be lessons learned from phase 2. We will be active participants in learning about how this program is used. And I have no doubt that we will be able to expand upon it in the future. And I think those conversations have yielded some movement, particularly on the copay. And I do want to acknowledge that again, it's not everything that I'm sure that everyone wants, but it was a movement nonetheless in a positive direction. I do want to acknowledge the good faith discussions on that. And of course, to the advocacy community and to those who come here to lend their voices to this, we appreciate your voices, we hear you, and we will try to do the best we can with this program. And of course, I want to recognize Q and Chris and the really helpful frame with which they presented not only the eHealth pilot, but also the investments that this institution is making for accessibility. And we'll continue to work with the team on that. Thank you.
Okay. Going to move on to other business, but I want to start by echoing what Q said, which is that we are thrilled to welcome a new board member, J.R. Rizzo, to this board, and emphasizing again what Q's point, which is we welcome, I think we're all pleased to have a member representing the disability community and someone with Dr. Rizzo's background. He's an accessibility expert, an NYU professor. He's a physician, and he leads much of the work at NYU Langone and the NYU broader network, and especially at the Rusk Institute in thinking about disability issues. So huge addition to this board. He's also, as I think you mentioned, legally blind, and an avid transit rider who can give us feedback on his everyday experience as a sight impaired person. So that's important. I also want to just hearken back. Please let's be respectful, because there's a time for public comment, and now we're going to do the business report. Okay. I also want to recognize what Q said, the incredible passion in this board and in this institution at the staff level, led by Chris and Q. I'm incredibly moved by what we have all done, but your leadership especially, on accessibility issues, that we are turning around the historic slow move by the MTA to become fully accessible in our amazing system, doing ADA accessibility projects at 4 times the pace of our predecessors, and making the improvements to paratransit that you and Chris highlighted. And proof of that commitment is that since all of us and some of the people who are here today in the audience started focusing in on the particularly low performance of some of the developer operated elevators in our system, we have made significant progress. A shout out to Jamie Torres Springer at the team at C&D, who have gone out and attacked every one of those elevators. They're all different situations, ranging from the Barclays Center elevator at Atlantic escalator and elevator at Atlantic Avenue, to one in a condo on Park Avenue South, to another one in an old office building. And we've moved the availability, that's the period of time when those elevators are actually in service instead of being out of service for repairs, from 80% up to 92% in a few short months. And we're going to keep going on that, because I actually agree with folks that it's an outrage when developers or any business is given a bonus or some advantage for putting in an elevator, and then they don't maintain it. That is one of the reasons with all of our new ADA projects, we're actually making it an obligation of the construction teams that put those new elevators in, that they then have to maintain them once they're open. And if they don't meet the availability standards, and I think those are 98%, then they actually have penalties on them, automatic economic penalties on them. So we have heard from our friends in the community about that issue, and we actually changed how we operate these new elevators to make sure that they have fewer problems and fewer cases where they're out of service. So hopefully progress, and in the long run, we're going to keep pushing on that issue. I also want to recognize a very important new member of the MTA family, which is our new Inspector General, Dan Court, who is here today. Dan, if you would stand. Dan is a veteran from New York City Department of Investigation, who's also served as the chief of the Attorney General's Public Integrity Bureau and as an assistant district attorney in Manhattan. And we're thrilled to welcome you. Although I know that there will be moments that you make us very uncomfortable, but that's the division of labor between us, and we look forward to working with you. To round out the newbies, we have a new member of the Traffic Mobility Review Board. Remember, that's the entity that was created by state law to give the MTA board advice on how to sort through all these requests for discounts and exemptions on congestion pricing, and ultimately how to set the toll. The new member of our board is John Durso, who is the head of the AFL-CIO of Long Island. He's replacing Scott Reckler, who is had other commitments that were sort of overwhelming him, especially he's the director of the Federal Reserve, and you know what's been going on with them. So, but we're happy to welcome John Durso, an important member of the labor community, to that effort which is taking place. And it's taking place starting today. And because we are at the moment when congestion pricing is changing gears as the federal approval is coming through, our dear friend Elizabeth Velez, who's on the TMRB, has elected to cycle off the board. So she's not here today, and I'm going to find another occasion to celebrate Elizabeth Velez. But this is that moment when she has, because of the Division of Labor, to focus on the TMRB, and she's winding down her board service. Now on to our business today. The MTA is starting the summer on a very strong footing. It was just a few weeks ago and that the state legislature, under the governor's leadership, took action to secure our financial future for the next 4 years and maybe beyond, because as part of the budget deal that in effect solved the MTA fiscal cliff, we were given a slice of what we hope and expect will be significant revenues from the new casinos that are scheduled to take place to be opened in New York City. So it's very well may be a solution that keeps on giving and helping to assure that we have strong mass transit even beyond. We also, and we talked about the success of our advocacy community and the passion and the power of the disability community. I just want to shout out that the New York transit advocacy community, who stuck up for the MTA in Albany over the last 6 months, was incredible, and I'm never going to stop acknowledging the power of that community to change lives and make it possible to have a first-class transit system. We also, in the last month or so, resolved a tentative agreement with the TWU Local 100, our largest labor organization. Shout out to Anita Miller, who leads our labor relations outfit, and to Rich Davey and those two leaders of great teams that worked hard. We're in the middle of the ratification process, and I won't say more about it, but obviously a significant milestone and representative of our commitment to maintaining an effective, true partnership with our represented workforce. On other topics that of public special interest, we're concluding the fair hearings that we are conducting as part of the process of executing on that budget deal. I know no one likes fare hikes, but that was part of the deal that the legislature and the governor worked out, that we had to have a resumption of those incremental fare increases, roughly 2% a year, starting with a 4% fare hike right now. But we haven't had an increase in the base fare since, I think, 2015. And it proved over time that we were doing a pretty good job of not disrupting customers hugely by having small, incremental, and predictable increases. And we're going back to that model. We're also, as I said, crossing the finish line by getting the FONSI for congestion pricing. And that is the first topic that I wanted to talk about. This afternoon, I'm going to be joining Governor Hochul at an event to celebrate that the Federal Highway Administration, which is part of U.S. DOT, has agreed that with the package of mitigation initiatives that we laid out in the environmental assessment, that 4,000-page document that we developed in tandem with literally hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders at hundreds of meetings and discussions, their finding is the congestion pricing does not create a significant impact under federal law. Let me underscore that. The finding of the federal officials who are responsible for the environmental law of the United States is that congestion pricing does not create an impact judged to be significant under federal law. I want to congratulate everybody who is involved in the effort to get there, and I'm going to list a few names because we're going to list a few names because a lot of people did. You can imagine with a 4,000-page document, there was a ton of work done. First and foremost, Dr. Allison De Sereno, who really is an expert and a general to lead everybody through to success on that. Where's Allison? Allison, please stand. Allison was helped by many, many people on our team, at 20th Floor Headquarters team, Mike Wojner, but the project team included Nicola Angel, Paul Acera, Stephen Krim, Romulo DeSantis, Leah Flax, Paul Fryman, Lou Oliva, legal and environmental experts in our team, Sergio Reese, Zulema Robinson, and others. And I just want to say to all of you who labored so hard under such incredible deadline pressure and responding to unbelievable technical comments, not to mention the demands of analyzing virtually every traffic intersection from here to Philadelphia and the air quality impacts on a region of 28 million people. Thank you. You've done historic service. So let's give them a hand. And I also want to thank our partners at New York City DOT, Will Carey, obviously the commissioner and your colleagues in City Hall, but at New York City DOT, a great team led by Will Carey, who's an assistant commissioner, and also the state DOT, who was the third partner in this triumvirate, led by Commissioner Marie-Therese Dominguez. And finally, the Federal Highway Administration, who had to do almost as much work as the team that we're acknowledging, led by not just Shaylin Bott, who's the Federal Highway Administrator under Secretary Pete Buttigieg, but the Regional Office of Federal Highways, led by Rick Markey in Albany, huge partners. So now with this shift in process to a new phase with a TMRB, the Statutory Advisory Group, can get started on their mission, which is laid out in the statute. And I just want to remind everybody, their mission is to develop a toll package that reduces the number of vehicles entering the central business district by at least 10%. We'd like to shoot for better than that, to really start to clear up traffic, clear up the air, reduce traffic violence, but also the second mission is to generate enough revenue to allow us to bond up to $15 billion for the MTA capital program. And that's really a big undertaking, because we are at the moment when we're ready to do the final phase, to undertake the final phase of our 2020 to 2024 capital program. In addition to the good news on congestion pricing, we're getting positive indication from the feds on capital, all kinds of capital grants, now that there has been a resolution on the operating budget. It gets a little bureaucratic, but the feds wanted to know that we had a plan to make sure that we could cover the cost of operating this great system for the foreseeable future. The Albany budget deal did that. Now they're starting to open the spigot on other grants with us, and Second Avenue Subway is right there ready to go. So today, we're doing a couple things in the capital plan amendment, but one of them is to put us in a position to put out the RFP for the first Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 contract, the utility relocation contract. And this is, the start of this project. Do not underestimate the historic importance of this. The Second Avenue elevated trains closed in 1940. 1940. And at that time, those people, Andrew's going to correct me on some aspect of my historical memory, I'm sure. And if not, Randy will be here to tell me what trains they ran, right? But in 1940, they were promised that there was a subway coming. And the promise kept being repeated and repeated and repeated. It is the most transit-dependent part of New York City, as judged by how people get to and from work and to school and otherwise. And they've been waiting for a subway all these years, and now we're on the verge of landing the federal grant that's going to make it happen. So big milestone, enabled in part by what you're going to do on the capital budget today. The same significance, I think, attaches to the progress on Penn reconstruction. You may have seen the governor's announcement yesterday that the state is now moving forward. We've started you've seen in the past what we call concept design. Now we're going to do the full design right up to the point where you can let contracts. That's what happened as of yesterday. And that's because the governor has repeated, and she reemphasized it again yesterday, it's time to fix Penn for our riders now. And we're not going to be waiting, and this was, again, part of her announcement yesterday, we're no longer going to be linking the progress and the commitment to Penn reconstruction to the plan for getting revenue out of real estate development. It's just going to be about putting together in a more traditional way state and federal money, hopefully with support from our partners across the river in New Jersey, in support of Penn reconstruction. Because if you've been to Penn recently, right, Paige? You gotta recognize that we put in the new corridor and the Long Island Railroad corridor. Penn Station experience is getting better for Long Island Railroad customers. Our New Jersey friends are still in a very, very tough facility and very, very crowded facility. They need it too, and we're counting on that partnership. The photo here is just one of many of the new renderings that were released yesterday, and it shows a huge new train hall. It could be the size of Moynihan plus Grand Central. If you take existing Penn and take out about half of that upper level, I see the one engineer on our board, Jamie Barbas, nodding. If you take out some of the upper level, you can create an open space with light penetrating because of the space between 2 Penn and the garden, and you can create a space the size of Grand Central and Moynihan Station's main hall combined. Time to get it done. Now, as the board and the public also know, we're preparing to implement the fare changes that were necessary to get the budget, to effectuate the budget deal in Albany. And thanks to the legislature and Governor Hochul, rather than having the 5.5% fare and toll hike that was enacted as part of this board's budget, we were able to reduce that to 4% because there was extra money coming from Albany. We have had public hearings on the fare proposals, and those wrapped up yesterday, 4 of them in total. Many of you came, and I want to thank the board for being present. Some were able to attend all of them. Thank you, Mr. Solomon, for making time. We had a slightly different approach this time around, which is that we tried to, where appropriate, respond to people's questions, in real time. And as a result, we were able to actually address some concerns that we heard. Several CUNY students had questions about their MetroCard, and we were able to link them to the CUNY program that provides free Metro cards. We also helped a lot of people sign up for fair fares who may be eligible. And of course, we heard some opposition to any fare increase at all, but also especially from some of the riders' organizations, a few voices in support of fare increase as part of the massive support we got from Albany this year. And there was some commentary about the fare pilots that are up for approval today by the board, the fare-free buses pilot that was enacted by the legislature, as well as the e-hail expansion. You're going to get more detailed information about the fare-free bus proposal next month. Remember, that's 5 bus routes, 1 in each borough. We're still hammering out the details, but we have to get it implemented by September under the law, so you will be hearing about it in July. But I just want to underscore again, making transit affordable throughout the system remains a major priority. We're doing everything we can to lessen the burden on riders by promoting fair fares, by keeping the Long Island Railroad and Metro North monthly tickets below the cost that they were charging pre-pandemic. Yes, there's a little 4% uptick, but we're still below pre-pandemic monthly ticket prices. And I hope that we, especially our suburban members, can make sure that that message is getting through. We're wildly expanding. Under this board's leadership, we've really taken a much broader approach to city ticket to try to make sure that New York City residents get the benefit of the commuter rail system. We expanded it everywhere in the off-peak, and now we're making it 24/7 in effect. The reduced fare for traveling on the commuter railroads within the city of New York is becoming a 24/7 thing. And we're also moving to the more flexible approach to Omni, in the sense that the rolling fare capping, so you can get the 7-day ticket, you can get in fact the benefit of freebies after you hit 13, whatever day you start your week on. Before it was limited to, Monday through Sunday. Now it's going to be whatever day. And we're aggressively cutting our operating expenses and tackling fare and toll evasion. And I want to talk about that for just a second. We're going to have a full update on fare and toll evasion efforts next month in July. But right now we're getting started on what is one of, I think, the biggest challenges and one of my pet peeves, which is the emergency gates, what I call the superhighway of fare evasion. Riders are not supposed to use them as regular exits, but we all know that New Yorkers have become habituated to popping the gate instead of going through turnstiles, and sometimes that's partly a design failure because the gates have been put in the most convenient location at the end of the fare array. But the problem is that once the gate is open, people fly in, and they could come in numbers of 5 and 10 and just stream in. We've got to do something about that. And what we're doing, for starters, is to put a delay on that gate. So if you hit the gate, and it may be for some people who need and want to use the gate, we're hopefully going to get more wide aisle gates out there, so there are fewer of those instances. But if you hit the gate, it's going to delay 30 seconds. Jamie, I'm not getting this entirely right, but there's going to be a period of delay. And that is designed to discourage people from just using that as a routine exit, because, as I say, once the gate is open, the fare evasion frequently begins. So in other places where we can't yet do it for technological or code reasons, we're going to continue, and credit to Rich Davey for this, we're going to continue to deploy gate guards. We are saving money. This is a little bit, it looks a little inefficient, but having somebody stand by the gate and to discourage people from using it as an exit is actually saving money at a lot of stations. And I say thank you to those people every time I pass them and remind them that it's making a difference, and they're making it possible for us to fund service and keep service at a high level. And on the railroads, we're also looking, frankly, at the whole pattern of how people are activating their e-tickets, because too many times there is an incentive for folks to delay that activation in the hopes that somebody won't come to collect the ticket. So there may be adjustments to how we handle that issue of when you have to activate your ticket in order to get credit for it. We also are now accepting the ID NYC ID for reduced fare and paratransit customer applications. That's the ID for folks who don't have a driver's license or more routine forms of government-issued ID. And that was one of the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Panels report. So we are working on fare evasion, and we're determined to make some progress. Again, more to follow on that. All right, I'm switching gears to celebrating people who need to be celebrated. So yesterday, we acknowledged that Steve Plachocki, who's one of the, where is Steve here? So I think we overdid it yesterday by celebrating him too much. But that Steve Plachocki, who's the only man who could make procurement seem incredibly exciting, is retiring, and thanked him for his service. And today, after 29 years of service, New York City Transit Chief Diversity and Equal Opportunity Officer Joel Andrews, Joel, please stand, is retiring. Great professional, highly regarded, as I've been come to learn about all of your colleagues. served under 14 presidents, and was one of the original authors of New York City Transit's EEO workplace policy, which in turn was accepted and adapted by folks throughout the agency. Your presence, your professionalism, your steady hand is going to be missed, but we also wish you a joyous retirement and well-earned. Thank you. But we also, on a less celebratory note, have to acknowledge the passing of two important MTA figures. I talked yesterday at the board about former MTA chair and former Lieutenant Governor Dick Ravitch. I want to once again celebrate his legacy, as I said, as in some ways the father of the modern MTA, having led this agency out of the darkest days in the late 70s and early 80s. More recently, he was a pivotal voice for funding transit as the essential service it is, and actually wrote op-eds during this legislative session urging the legislature to take action on the governor's budget proposal. He is part of what we're celebrating today in terms of the MTA's security, as well as where we got out of in the 1980s. And we all owe him an incredible debt of gratitude for his incredible public service. And last week, we also lost Michael Horodnichano, Dr. Horodnichano, who led MTA Capital Construction for many years. Charming, colorful, a friend to everybody who worked with him, and a passionate advocate for MTA capital projects. He oversaw some incredible projects, including Phase 1 of 2nd Avenue Subway, the 7-line extension, the opening of Fulton Transit Center, and as well as East Side Access. So I was there at his funeral, as were the former MTA chairs Walder and Pendergast, and we all agreed that the MTA owes a lot to Dr. Horodnichano, and we're going to miss him. I just want to acknowledge him as well. So with that, Mr. Glucksman.
Do we have a mention of Don Harold, the patriarch of the Transit Museum?
Please.
Yes, he was worked in public relations. I met him back in 1965, and he's always an advocate for preserving equipment, and the Transit Museum owes him a big debt of gratitude for all that he did. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Okay. At this point, the capital plan amendment. Mr. Mulligan?
The MTA brings two action items today, the 20 to 24 capital program amendment number 3 and the 15 to 19 funding amendment. Amendment number 3 to the MTA 20 to 24 capital program with a total funding amount of $55.442 billion, and to authorize the MTA to submit the $52.116 billion capital program to the Capital Program Review Board portion of that amendment to the CPRB for its review and proposal, consistent with the recommendations of the Crow Forensic Audit and in accordance with Public Authorities Law 2969B. Amendment 3, as we discussed more extensively yesterday, moves $878 million from the core CPRB agencies to network expansion, including $678 million for the second phase of 2nd Avenue Subway, as discussed by the chairman earlier, as required by the federal government to increase the contingency for that project to make it eligible for a full funding grant agreement later this year, as well as $200 million going to coach purchases for Penn Station Access Project. And that transfer of money, we're looking to mitigate the impact of that when we receive a decision on the federal state partnership grant that we've applied to. That's a federal grant under the Biden Infrastructure Act for an up to 80% funding support for the Penn Access Project. That award, which is expected in the fall, could be as high as $1.4 billion in new federal revenues which would allow us to restore some of the funding that we've mobilized in order to facilitate the award of Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 and the early award of PIN access in December of 2021. Amendment 3 also enables the acceleration of important state-of-grid repair projects like the enhanced overcoat and steel repair system for New York City's elevated project. It enables the acceleration of Phase 2 of the Park Avenue Viaduct, as well as funding additional new projects like the B&T main cable dehumidification project for the Verrazano Bridge, and facilitating funding for Long Island Railroad Hollis Station ADA construction as well as platform improvements.
Did you say Hollis Station? Yeah, okay, good.
Hollis. I'm sorry, I apologize. Additionally, in accordance with public authorities law, the amendment right sizes project estimates based on scope, schedule revisions, bid results, and market conditions. And now I hand it over to Kevin to discuss the funding elements of the amendment.
Thanks, Tim. Both the 2020-24 and 15-19 capital program funding mixes are proposed to be adjusted to best meet the financing requirements of Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 project, the capital costs of which are included in both programs. The net impact of the proposed funding changes is that federal funding of $643 million will be moved from the 2015 to 19 program to the 2020-24 program, and $643 million of funding from MTA bonds will, on an offsetting basis, be moved from 2020 to 24 to 15 to 19 program. These changes will result in no increase in the overall funding for both programs, no increase in the overall amount of bonds required to be issued by MTA, just a change in the mix of sources. Importantly, these capital program amendments are necessary at this time to keep on track our securing of the full funding grant agreement from the federal government for Second Avenue Subway Phase 2. Tim.
Both staff summaries are in your book, and we submit these action items for your consideration and vote.
I will make the motion. Any second? Second from Ms. Lopez. Questions or comments on the capital program amendment? Hearing none. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? And the motion carries. The board, at some length, you've heard from Chris Pangilinan and Q about the eHealth program. Let me turn it over to Jay Patel, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer, to introduce the action item. Jay.
Thank you, Chair. As Chris described earlier this morning, Phase 1 of eHealth program began in October 2017. MTA analyzed Phase 1 and, based on the results, has restructured the eHealth program. Program details are outlined in the staff summary you received. Today, we are proposing to end Phase 1 and transition to Phase 2 expansion around August 2023. I submit this item for board consideration and vote.
Motion? Lisa Soren, second. Mr. Chu. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? Okay, the item carries. The next item for the board to consider is also a pilot program, the Fare Free Bus Program, introduced earlier this year in conjunction, as I said, with the budget enacted by the state legislature. Jay, will you take us through this initiative as well?
Thank you, Chair. As you may recall, Part NN of Chapter 56 of the 2023 New York laws requires the MTA to establish and implement a fare-free bus pilot program within New York City. The legislation required the authority to present the fare-free bus pilot program to its board for approval no later than 60 days after the effective date of the act, which is this month's board meeting, and for implementation no later than 90 days after board adoption. The pilot program is required to operate for a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 1 year. In accordance with the legislation, MTA shall establish one fare-free bus route in each county of the city, taking into account without limitation and selecting the bus routes to include in the pilot program fare evasion, ridership, service adequacy, and equity for low-income and economically disadvantaged communities, and access to employment and commercial activity. In addition, and as a companion to the program, MTA will also provide fare-free paratransit trips to customers who begin and end their trips within 3/4 of a mile of the fare bus routes. I submit this item for approval.
Motion? Lisa, second. Mr. Jones, any discussion of this item? Midori.
I heard a resounding yes from many board members. Thank you, Jay. One question, this item does not identify the bus routes as of yet. And when does the 90 days happen? What day is the 90 days?
Sure. As you heard the chair talk about earlier, we'll come back in July to discuss the routes. This will be implemented around the end of September.
And are there any requirements or anything around headways related to the fare pilot?
I don't think it's specific to headways. It gives us the list of fare evasion, ridership, looking at equity in choosing those bus routes.
I guess I would propose as part of a discussion to ensure that, if we're doing a fare bus pilot, and, I'm sure you're all going to design it in a very thoughtful way, how we also think about the headways that we'd like to give to our customers, so then we can really emulate, kind of the typical way we run buses. So I guess I would hate for a headway for a bus route in the Bronx to be 30 minutes, each stop, because it happens to be free, and maybe that saves us money, which I actually doubt it does. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And just as a reminder, the routes are specified to be a net $15 million of operating costs. So there's parameters around the dollar value for us.
Okay, Mr. Jones, and then Ms. Lopez and Mr. Albert.
I love this idea, but I do want to raise the problem that emerged when we had the pause on fare collection on the buses because of COVID. And it clearly is one of the overhangs in terms of continued fare evasion on buses. And clearly, I just want to be constantly monitoring the fact that we may inadvertently create another crisis in fare evasion on buses. I'm absolutely supportive of it, but I'm concerned.
So the parameters around us monitoring and measuring are also part of the 6-month pilot that we're looking at. So we'll be monitoring fare evasion, ridership levels, and report back to the board on those statistics.
But I just want to reassure you that one of the considerations, because fare evasion is called out in the legislation, that the team that's analyzing this at Transit Operations Planning is looking at is overlap with other routes, because what you don't want to do is have people be confused about which is the free bus and which is the paid bus, and that creates its own bad dynamic. So that is being taken into consideration. I appreciate your comment. We had Ms. Lopez, and then Mr. Albert, and then again, I think Ms. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my question was answered, but I just want to confirm. So legislation said we could run this pilot program a minimum of 6 months, maximum of a year. So Jay, you're saying 6 months. Is it from the time of implementation, or when? It's from the implementation. So at the end of September starts the period for 6 months, and then up to a year. But so I'm sorry. I thought at first you said it was only going to be for 6 months. No, it's a minimum of 6 months, maximum of 1 year. But we don't know how long this pilot program. Correct. We'll be evaluating during the process and report back to the board. Thank you.
Yes, I'm also concerned that this could lead to fare evasion on other buses or the subway, and I'm wondering, will we have clear signage on these 5 routes that say this is a pilot? you know, this is where you don't have to pay. If you're connecting to another bus route or a subway, please remember those are not fare free, and you must pay your fare.
Mr. Davey has designed a signage system that's very clear. It includes a hologram of Mr. Davey yelling, "This is the free bus, this is the free bus." Rich, describe what you've done.
In transit, we too share the concerns raised, in particular for our bus operators who are operating those vehicles that we are still requiring fares, right? We have seen employee assaults, for example, that we're very mindful of. So, but to answer your question, yes, we are looking at very clear signage, but also not looking to create a micro fleet. I think that's one thing that Frank and I have really thought about is if you carve out, those buses out of that route, then it does not allow, the bus team the flexibility to move buses around as they might need for shuttles or other issues. But bottom line is we've developed some in-house signage. The chair and I actually saw some mock-ups of that last week. It looked actually pretty good and should only take our bus operators a matter of 1 or 2 minutes to actually deploy it, which is another consideration. So.
Ms. Valdivia.
Thank you, Chair. So we have these 5 bus routes in different boroughs at different points in our time at the MTA. People have talked about all-door boarding and the potential of all-door boarding. I guess my request is, since we're doing the free pilot anyway, is there a way in which we can learn more about all-door boarding as it relates to almost like I don't know if it's an experiment of sorts, but to understand what kind of seconds maybe that you're gaining or you're losing, what kind of seconds that you're gaining on the route, so then we can understand, assuming, fare evasion proposals are in place at some point, all-door boarding. How can that be incorporated into the 5 bus routes?
I think that's why we've been really calling this a study to look at a number of things. So, for example, the bus fleet will have, I think most of the bus fleet will have the automated passenger counters, for example, right? So obviously if people aren't paying, that's one way to determine how many folks are on the bus, but looking at the automated passenger counts will also allow us to see what behavior changes are happening on the free bus routes or on those that are still paid. So I think there's a lot for us to learn, and we're in that regard. I think that's why this study should, among other things, help us to consider what all-door boarding might bring us in the future.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Can I call the question? All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item carries. Thank you all. Now to our even more routine board business. The minutes of the May board meeting and minutes from each of the committee have been distributed to all members. Any corrections or omissions? Mr. Albert.
So on page 8, in the 3rd paragraph, it says the chair acknowledge instead of acknowledged the transit advocates. That's just a grammatical one. On page 9, near the second to the last paragraph, it has fares as F-A-R-E-F-A-R-E-S instead of F-A-I-R-F-A-R-E-S. But a more serious note, on page 11, it has you stating that the R68 cars are old friends and you rode them on the 3 and the shuttle. I sure hope you didn't, because that would be a calamity.
I
You
think
can't
you
have
made the
B-division
correction.
cars
I think
on-
you made the correction last month, and now it will be emblazoned in the minutes.
I think
as
it should
well.
be R62s that
Yes,
you refer.
yes, correct. All right. Any other corrections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as it's distributed.
I believe
Oh,
that
yeah. There you go.
the Bridges and Tunnel Authority minutes have to wait till July for a quorum.
Thank you for that clarification. So with the corrections and also the exclusion of the B&T minutes, they're approved as corrected. There are no items from the Bridges and Tunnels and the New York City Transit Committee this month. May we hear from the Railroad Committee? Board Member Chu.
Mr. Chair, the Joint Railroad Committee met Monday and reports the following. There is one competitive item for $7.8 million, which is on behalf of the Connecticut Department of Transportation from the MTA. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second. Ms. Lopez, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item is approved. Mr. Chu.
Well, before I conclude, while I have the floor, I'd like to commend the addition of, take the opportunity to commend the addition of John Durso to the TMRB, someone who I've worked with going on 2 decades. I couldn't think of a finer person to serve in that difficult role. And John is a glutton for punishment, and he's proved it yet again. This concludes the Joint Railroad Committee report.
Thank you. Board Member Solomon, would you do the Capital Committee report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Capital Program Committee met Monday, reports the following. Construction Development has 5 competitive items and 8 ratifications for a total of $30.5 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Brown, Mr. Jones, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items carry.
This concludes the Capital Program Committee report.
Finance Committee, Mr. Solomon, would you do that as well?
Sure. The Finance Committee met Monday and reports the following. There's 1 action item this month. The item seeks board approval to authorize actions relating to the payment of the state assessment on the MTA and its constituent agencies for the Public Work Enforcement Funds for the year 2023. The committee recommends this action, and I move it.
Second, Mr. Jones, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item is approved.
There is 1 competitive item for $17.6 million. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second,
Second.
Ms. Soren, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The item carries.
There are 5 real estate items this month. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Chu, all in favor? Opposition or abstention? Thank you. The real estate items are approved.
This concludes the Finance Committee report.
The final set of items for board consideration is going to take place in executive session. Before, is there an additional retirement, or did I handle that? I handled that one correctly. May I have a motion to convene an executive session to discuss matters regarding collective bargaining and a personnel matter pursuant to Section 105(1)(e) of the New York State Public Officers Law? Motion?
Motion.
Second, Ms. Lopez, all in favor? We're on executive session. Thank you. The board discussed and voted affirmatively on labor agreements between MTA and various labor unions on a separate personnel matters. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Ms. Barbas, thank you. Ms. Chu, thank you for your second. All in favor? The meeting is adjourned. given the shortness of time, I have to get somewhere. So I'm going to just take questions, Tim. Why don't you let her rip?
Very good. We're going to start with David Meyer, who is here from Streets Block.
Hello, happy to be here. This might be a question for Rich, but come on up.
Yeah, we will do that.
Midori mentioned all-door boarding in the context of the free bus pilot, and I just wanted to hear a little bit about where the all-door boarding situation stands, whether that's a consideration in the free bus pilot, and what other considerations are on the agenda in the all-door boarding sphere at the moment.
I can say with certainty in the free bus pilot, the impact on speeds is definitely one of the considerations, as well as the impact on fare evasion, the impact on a variety of different things. So that will, to the extent that all-door boarding does relate to bus speeds and service speeds, I think that's how that question will be factored in. But I don't think, Rich, I don't think we need to drag you up here, although Mr. Meyer tried to summon you.
All right, let's go to Steve Nesson down there from WNYC and Gothamist. Steve.
Hey, Jano. Just to follow up on the Penn Station announcement yesterday, Governor Hochul said, pointing at the renderings, these are just concepts. Now we're going to open it to any architect, design firm, engineer to allow the opportunity to compete for a position. Those were her exact words. So my question is, what was the $65 million contract with FX and WSP used for last year? And are they now competing for the job they were already awarded last year?
No, I don't know the exact quote, but here's the situation. Last year, there was a ton of work done during the master plan period. You know that with the three parties. That's the work that was FXC's work. Now, going forward, they were, and I don't know the dollar amounts, but FXC did win a design competition. If you remember, the governor held an event at Moynihan Station celebrating the beginning of an RFP for designers. That process, that procurement process, led to the selection of FX Collaborative and John McCaslin. Buried in this, John McCaslin is the architect who did King's Cross in London, which is, probably the best analog for Penn Station, an old, pretty beat up and outdated facility that's been modernized, both in terms of design, but opened up and made a great public facility and a great transportation facility. So we're thrilled that FXC and McCaslin were selected to be the design team for this phase. That said, I think what the governor was getting at is that in the future going process that the FXC McCaslin team is going to go, there is openness to additional ideas, and we know that there are a lot floating out there. And I think what she was trying to convey was an openness of the team to, because we've added McCaslin and we are looking at the project anew, an openness to re-examining, not just having only the stuff that was represented in the master plan documents, which you've seen, Steve.
All right, let's move on to Marla Diamond in the mezzanine up there, CBS 880.
Yep.
Marla.
And I'll just get these in quickly. I wanted to talk about the fare and toll hikes for those people driving in on the MTA bridges and tunnels. The toll hike would be 6 to 7% on top of what we now believe will be a congestion fee. So what do you say to drivers who feel that they are being, unfairly made to pay for, a transit system?
Well, in fairness, I say respectfully, one of the core concepts of the MTA, going back to Governor Rockefeller, was to take to use toll revenues to cross subsidized mass transit. There's no question that is central to the way we do transportation in the region. Is that we do use toll revenues to make sure we can operate a mass transit system. Otherwise, if everybody drove because the mass transit system stunk, the drivers couldn't get around. So it is in the interest of drivers. It's a little counterintuitive, and I understand why everybody might not agree about this, but it is in the interest of drivers that we do something about congestion. And the best way, and it's proven in London and Stockholm and Singapore and capitals around the world, the best way to help ease congestion and to make it easier for people who have to drive, including trucks especially, to try to reduce traffic by using tolls and the congestion fee. To do that, that's what we're doing, and I hope the folks who do have to drive will see the benefit over time.
And on to Evan Simcoe Bednarski right there in the front row with the Daily News.
Hey, Jenna, how you doing? So, quick question on the East New York bus terminal. There's been issues with fire suppression for some time now, and I know the Department of Labor gave I believe it was a June 14th deadline for some of the repairs. I'm just wondering where you guys are at with that now.
I'm going to call Rich up to see if he has anything to say, but here's what I think needs to be said, since you've gotten into this, that a fire watch is a code-compliant way of making sure that if a fire suppression system or the sprinkler system isn't working properly, or like the one that's here is undergoing repairs, that you're maintaining fire safety under the code. And that's what seems to be happening, although the project to fix the fire suppression system has gone on longer than intended, but there has been a pretty clear effort to maintain code compliance and obviously to protect our workforce. Protecting the workforce is the first priority, but obviously we're in the code compliance business as well. Rich, anything?
Just quickly, so absolutely in compliance. That's why we have the fire watch, but we are anxious to get that fire suppression system up and running. We continue to follow, let's just say, leaks as we go through the system. So we've been working with C&D and subways to fix it permanently, because at the end of the day, we want a functioning system. And frankly, the fire watch is costing us money. It should have an actual fire suppression system in the building that will allow us to get rid of the fire watch. Bottom line, we're compliant. It is safe. Thank you.
And we move on the Zoom equipment there. Michelle Caskey of Bloomberg News. Michelle, you're up.
Hi. Was just wondering with the news that that's happened this week with the federal approval. Wondering where things stand, what your timetable looks like, if there's been any adjustment on the timetable. When do you actually anticipate drivers? When's as soon as drivers might actually start paying the congestion pricing fee, and do you still anticipate?
Michelle, I just want to give you a chance to ask another question because I'm not doing congestion pricing. We're going to talk about that issue in about half an hour.
Okay. Then I'm good. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to Ben Brockfeld right there, AM New York. Ben.
Hey, Jano. I wanted to ask about some of the testimony on the Access-Ride e-hail pilot. Specifically, I was hoping you could respond to the notion they raised that it's quote rationing service for people with disabilities in a way that isn't experienced by people with able bodies. And also, I was wondering if you could respond, because basically they seem to be all but explicitly threatening a lawsuit against the MTA over that. So I want to see if you could respond to that.
But what I would say is the phase one pilot didn't work. You had an incredibly unequal, the system was improperly structured not to collect data, not to be a true pilot and giving the MTA something that you could learn from and turn into a long-term plan, but instead concentrated 6% of the benefits on a very, very small group of people. Over $100,000 a year was being spent by 6% of the people. That's 70 people, right? So, Chris, and actually we're investigating a lot of those people to see if there was impropriety or fraud or that was being used by people other than those enrolled in the system. So the system was not well structured. What Chris and team have come up with is something that has the possibility of having a long-term applicability in a fair way. That's why we're randomly selecting participants instead of giving it only like phase one to insiders who knew about it. You heard some people say, I knew about this because I was an activist. Well, we're going to have this spread more broadly against everybody, across everybody who's the 50+ thousand users of the system. So we're really excited about this new approach, which is designed to create something that might be sustainable for more people. That's the real goal. And it's all in addition to everyday Access-a-Ride, which is right now better than it's ever been and carrying more people. Unlike the rest of the transit system, more people than pre-COVID are covering it. They're voting, so to speak, with their user patterns that they think the Access-a-Ride system, the base Access-a-Ride system, is working well. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jano, and thanks for the question. Yeah, I think it's a good reminder that the Access-a-Ride system will always be unlimited and always be available for anyone that wants to use the traditional Access-a-Ride system, including the e-hail participants. E-hail is a layer on top of that to provide that flexibility and spontaneity, and it is in line with a lot of other on-demand type of programs around the country. No other program has unlimited on-demand rides. The one in San Francisco, for example, is capped far lower than ours at $330 with a 20% copay, and that $330 a month with a 20% copay. Boston also has a copay and a limited number of rides per month, only 2 actually for people that start off, and a $40 per trip. So again, my point is that other properties around the United States also have these kind of structures with their program.
All right, thank you, Chris. Last question now. Joining his first MTA news conference ever, it's Ry Rivard on the Zoom machine from Politico. Ry, go ahead.
Thank you. On the PEN, on the ASTM plan, there are mixed signals and sort of different takeaways from the governor's presser yesterday. Can you give us your current thinking on the ASTM plan and sort of why that might have evolved?
I don't know how the ASTM plans evolve. This is a plan for by one private sector company that apparently is seeking a sole source contract, a non-competitive contract award from the MTA. So I don't know, one, how that plan has evolved or not evolved. Here's what I do know. The MTA's approach to Penn Station is going to continue to focus on a couple things. One, safety, more and better entrances and egresses for fire safety and also just general circulation. Two, that we're going to be making improvements to circulation focused on where the passengers are and where they're going, and that's at the 7th Avenue end, which is the large train hall that you see portrayed in those new renderings. So, and three, that we are committed to improving 8th Avenue, but we believe that you can do that with dramatic improvements to the corners, and that you don't need to have the ASTM plan, also known as the Madison Square Garden plan, executed to bail out Madison Square Garden and give them $1 billion. So the MTA is about passenger movement and about prudent investment of public dollars. It's not about instead of getting Madison Square Garden to cooperate with the public facility to bail Madison Square Garden out because of their less than successful theater investments.
Thank you, Jano. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Rich. And good afternoon from Lower Manhattan.